Hello everybody. Today we shall discuss factors influencing on development. Let us take mental development. The brain of a child is almost completely developed by the first 5 years. Child around 6 years of age can adjust to any school situation and benefits from it. Child learns and uses skills of literacy and numeracy. Language and speech development takes place simultaneously. These aspects refer to the mental development of the child. Following activities may be taken up in the school. Learning activities like reading, writing, arithmetic, concept formation, problem solving, and abstract thinking have to wait upon the mental set, physiological readiness of the children. Keeping this in mind, educational programs should be organized with utmost care. Teachers should inculcate in the children right attitudes, interests, and skills. The classroom atmosphere should be free from tension so that adequate learning can take place. Learning activities should be related to the daily life and experiences of the children in order to evoke interest in them for learning. A number of co-curricular activities like discussions, debates, scouting, dramatization, etc. should be arranged. Emotional development. An emotion is described as a stirred up state accompanied by certain physiological changes. It has three components: feeling state, changes in internal body, functioning, and external changes in the. During infancy, the child is unable to express emotions and is in a general state of excitement. With the advancement of age, several emotions become differentiated. As age is accompanied by increased maturation and experience, child's emotional responses become more differentiated as he or she grows. This gradual increase in emotions through maturation and learning is called emotional development. Now, certain activities regarding emotional development are: the teacher should be democratic. They should develop self-esteem and self-confidence in the children. The children should be made to feel that their ideas and opinions are valued. Guidance should be provided wherever necessary. The teacher should become a confidant to each student so that the student himself or herself would seek the teacher's advice in solving his or her problems. Now, moral development. Moral development includes learning of moral concepts and moral behavior by the child. And some of the activities are: first of all, the teacher should set a model himself or herself. The teacher should inculcate desirable values like honesty, sense of right and wrong, and the will to do the right thing in the children. Epics and stories of great leaders should be told to the students. Stories of persons who are honest, have done the right thing and helped others would be told to the students. Social development. When a child is born, he or she does not exhibit any form of social behavior. As she grows, she is expected to behave in accordance with the social expectations and conform to the acceptable forms of interactions in the society. The process through which above changes takes place is called socialization. And activities, team games, group projects, and excursions should be arranged to promote cooperation and adjustment among the children. Teachers should study the isolates and the neglected in the class and help them to make friends. Children should be encouraged to participate in community services. Citizenship training is also necessary. The children should be taught civic responsibilities, value of public property, and so on. Now, these are the developmental aspect and related activities we have seen. Now, coming to the problems associated with the different aspects of development. We have focused on understanding the elementary school child about the factors affecting growth and development. Now, let us see some of these factors, how these are specifically affecting on the growth and development. A child is the product of both heredity and environment. Certain traits like the color of the eyes, skin color, height and others are controlled by the genetic makeup. They are inborn traits of the particular individual. On the other hand, some aspects of personality like social behavior are influenced by environment. Depending on the environmental influences, a child can develop adaptive or maladaptive behavior patterns. The child must grow in an environment that is free of abuse and neglect. The child must be guaranteed adequate care and nutrition. The child must receive adequate stimulation in the form of love, attention, play, and education. Intelligent handling of children requires knowledge of how children develop and how such development can be influenced favorably. So, child develops as a whole, being physically, mentally, socially, and emotionally. He or she is a product of the family history, satisfactions, and strengths. As these do not always work smoothly, he or she may develop problems with one or more aspects of development during the process of growing up. The different forces that operate in the child's environment in different degrees and combinations can be physical, intellectual, emotional, cultural, and economic. In other words, the various forces in life, such as family, neighborhood, and social interact with each other and influence the development pattern of a particular child. Now, let us see problems associated with the physical development. Problem, there are some problems which are associated strongly with physical development. Let us see first one, common problems faced by the children. The specific problems associated with the body and how these problems create problems and how these are influencing on physical development. There are also some physical factors or defects or diseases like polio which may cripple a child and indirectly may affect his or her behavior and feelings because of the restrictions placed upon him or her, or because of the negative attitude towards him or her of adults and friends. Since a child is a growing being and his or her body is constantly changing, the timing of remedial work in relation to a physical injury or defect may be an important factor in determining the effect of the injury. The younger the child, more are the chances of recovering or recovering the child. It is further said that the relation between physical and mental growth is very complex. For the great majority of children, physical factors may play a role in their mental growth, depending upon the circumstances and situations in individual cases. It is very important to remember that because of the flexibility of the development in the early years, the sooner one provides for an appropriate learning environment with remedial treatment, the greater would be the ability of the child to reach his or her maximum potential. In other words, the extent to which a child can concentrate on work, be attentive, solve problems, and have self confidence would certainly depend upon his or her physical well being, but it will also depend on how he or she learns to deal with his or her physical problems. Apart from the visible physical handicaps, there are others who are excessively conscious of their color, structure, height, and so on, and feel that they are not as beautiful as others. This is very common among adolescents. In such cases, a teacher or a parent can help the individuals. Now, come to the nutrition part. Children need sufficient food and nutrition to develop their body. Food affects health and growth. Insufficient intake of balanced diet can cause different types of deficiencies in the body. Malnutrition affects a child's energy level, makes him or her prone to disease. Protein deficiency is also possible and it is known to affect academic performance. The quality of nutrition can affect behavior and emotional adjustment of the child. Most often in our country, the causes of malnutrition are poverty, faulty eating habits, and emotional stress and strain. The common nutritional deficiencies seen in children are associated with lack of proteins, calorie intake, iron in the diet, causing mild to high degree of malnutrition. Scientists show that a high percentage of our school going children suffer from nutritional deficiencies. The government has introduced the supplementary nutrition program or the midday meal which is given to children in the school to help improve their nutritional status. Physical illness and injury. All children fall ill sometime or the other, but frequent illness are a cause of concern. Prolonged illness may adversely affect muscle development, since during illness they lose some of their tone and tend to become flabby. Severe illness, on the other hand, may produce metabolic disturbances which can have a permanent negative effect on children's bodies. As a parent or a teacher, it would help us were aware of the consequences of certain illness on the child's growth so that we can help the child to make a adjustments in life. It must also be remembered that severe or prolonged illness have emotional significance attached to them, and we will now go into this aspect. During illness, parents generally tend to overprotect their children and do not explain to them the details about illness. Parents and teachers who understood the reason and origin of such behavior can help the children to grow out of it. The child is not only physically uncomfortable but also confused. He or she may be anxious or fearful. We may conceive of this happening as punishment, especially if parents have related the illness to some shortcoming of the child. He or she may revert to an immature or earlier form of social or emotional behavior, may react aggressively, may enjoy being sick because of the attention received. On the other hand, if properly handled along with the love and care, the child may grow in emotional maturity because of experiences. Such a constructive response depends upon the child's emotional stability and his or her relationship with the parents. A child may have so called emotional as well as physical convalescence. An eating problem may emerge from a period of lack of appetite, creates temporary disinterest in food, and parental concern may lead to urging and even forcing the child to eat. As in the case of a crippled child, it may also influence his or her social development by prevailing from developing useful skills. Some parents and teachers may try to ignore the differences and expect the child to carry on without privileges. Others may overprotect the child, not doing so create a feeling of self pity and thus prevent him or her from growing into a normal, healthy individual. Some, however, are able to encourage and assist the child to utilize all of the abilities. Problems associated with emotional development. Individuals differ in their response to stress. Some react vigorously and some less intensely. Some who are unable to express an emotion freely may express it through a physiological, bodily function. For example, a child who is anxious about school or writing an exam may develop stomach pain or nausea. A child's growth and development is influenced by the experience of success, acceptance, enjoyment, and other satisfactions in life. While experiences such as rejection, being labeled or ugly or plump or good for nothing hamper growth and functioning, creating a feeling of inferiority in the child. Teachers and parents can help children if they accept each child as an individual and treat him or her accordingly by providing motivation and understanding his or her limitations. The adjustments, if not achieved, may have effects on the emotional stability and behavior of the child. Home climate in which a child grows is very important. A child who feels he or she is loved gets affection gets affection from home, and who feels secure will certainly develop into an emotionally well balanced individual. The nature discipline used at home should not be of severe type, which should arouse anxiety in the child. It should rather be of the type which helps the child to understand himself or herself, as well as the child around him or her. Parents and teachers have great influence upon pattern and speed of the child's emotional development. It is important to understand that explosive expression of emotions is typical of young children. There could be many causes for such behavior problem. This may be an indication of the basic retardation in general growth, as would be true for a feeble minded child who even will expert treatment lags behind the normal rate in all areas of physical and physiological control. As children move forward in emotional growth from overt form of expression of emotions to more socially accepted forms, it becomes less possible to judge what their inner feelings and reactions are. Now, coming to the problems associated with the academic achievement. Pressure for high academic achievement is one of the main factors causing stress in our school going children. What it is a parent or a teacher all seem to play, I mean, very important role to lay a great deal of emphasis on the child doing well in school. It is therefore important to look at the various factors that affect the school performance of a child. Poverty is one of the factors which is of great importance. If child is hungry or ill, then he or she cannot concentrate on the studies. Therefore, it is important to first feed and treat the child and then expect good school performance. Deprivation is another factor which affects school performance of young children. A child living in a deprived and impoverished conditions, impoverished conditions of life, lacks the basic stimulation and motivation to learn and do well in school. Irregular attendance in school is another reason why the way children drop out from school or do not do well. They are unable to maintain the link and understand what is being taught in schools because they do not come to school regularly. It is important, therefore, for the teacher and parents to realize that if we want children to adjust to school and do well academically, we need to take care of their basic needs, that they attend schools regularly and motivate and provide them with a learning environment in which they can grow and learn in freedom. Above all, we need to help them rather than label them as a dull or a bright child and expect from each child what he or she is capable of doing. Now, coming to the problems associated with gender bias and gender related issues. The discrimination against girls is deeply rooted in our social and cultural prejudice, which value a son as an aspect but look upon a girl as a liability and a drain on the resources of family. So deeply engraved is the concept that a male child is preferable, that a woman fasts and often goes to religious places to pray for a male child. The birth of a female child, on the other hand, is most often viewed with disappointment and at best with indifference. Statistics show that in India, girls do not achieve their full weight and height in capacity and potential on account of dietary deficiencies. The cause of malnutrition among girls is not so much due to lack of food as lack of access to it. Because of undernourishment and resultant poor health, girls are more prone to diseases and slower in recovery. Again, fewer girls than boys receive timely or adequate health care. Hospital records show that more boys are brought in for treatment than girls, who are usually admitted only when the illness has become critical. Education in the case of girls is an expandable opinion. Fewer girls than boys enroll in school. Nearly one third of the girls who join class 1 drop out before entering class 2. The incidence of stagnation among girls is twice that among boys, and girls constitute 65% of the illiterate children in the age group of 4 to 19 years. Gender discrimination is also seen in school enrollment, and the type of school is girl usually goes to. She is not motivated to do well at school as compared to boy who is motivated and help to do well at school. Girls begin to participate in domestic work much earlier than boys. They often do heavier or more difficult work compared to boys like fetching water, gathering fuel, tending younger brother or sister and minding cattle. Gender discrimination is obvious in many instances in the school situations. As parents or teachers, we must collectively make conscious efforts to remove this discrimination against the child, the girl child in the home and in the school situation. Let us help the girl child by checking for girl dropouts and make efforts in retaining girls in school by a special care of the nutritional and health needs of the girl child. By teachers can take the help of the parent teacher association in the school or to create awareness on on sex discrimination by discussing their issues. By creating awareness among boys and girls on gender equality so that we can sensitize young girls and boys on the issues. Finally, we must acknowledge that for a long time the girl child has been denied her share of woman dignity and opportunity. It is time she is given a due not only to make her a better mother and more worthwhile contributor to society, but simply because it is her right. Now, the applications of the whole child concept for parents, teachers, and counselors. As advisor and counselor, the specialist in physical growth needs to have information about children's eating and play routines at various ages. We can further guide parents and work effectively with the family, the teacher, and the other concerned. The counselor meets children at critical periods when their homes are being broken up, illness, death, or other unpleasant circumstances have entered their lives. The children are frightened, confused, or otherwise emotionally disturbed. Proper treatment at such times may make all the difference on the one hand and a satisfactory emotional adjustment together with the physical well-being on the other. The teacher would scold and punish the child, and the problem became more severe. The child was sent to the principal, who asked the child, "What is wrong, dear? Are there any problems at home?" And the child replied, "My father died 2 months ago." The principal sympathetically said, "Sorry, I did not know." And the child thought, "God, my world has crashed and she does not know even." Proper understanding of the process of learning in children are carried out later in the teaching situation depends upon the situation and the creativity of the teachers. Various methods to adjust school programs essential for the optimal growth and development and needs of individual children should be used. So these are the things we have discussed. Now let us see the interpersonal communications which help us to know the child. What is interpersonal communication? Communication means sending and receiving messages, even without or noticing it or being aware of it. We often send messages about what we think and feel to people around us and also receive messages from them. Even when we choose to remain silent, we communicate non-verbally. That is, without the use of words. For example, if you decide to ignore a flight that is taking place around us, I mean, if we decide to ignore a fight, or we may be communicating our desire to stay out of the fight. While we are looking out some exercises, we must notice that in all the situations, all the people are involved in sending messages. Sometimes the underlying messages may have been the same as the ones that were apparent at first glance in the situation, and other times there may have been some addition to the verbal message. In other situation, we would have observed that there was an inconsistency in the messages given by the person. Communication is a two-way street or path. We forget that we are sending messages to a person and the person is sending messages back to us. Everybody is sending and receiving messages. For example, Sonia's turning away from Priya was a message. It was a message that was a response to what Priya had said. In other words, what we say and do, that is, communicate, has an effect on what the other person says and does. After all, that is usually why we communicate, because we want certain kind of response from the child or other person. If you want to achieve certain goals or responses, we have to be careful about the way we send messages. We need to realize that other people's messages also have an effect on us. Irrespective of what alternate responses we imagined, the fact still remained that they were reactions. This sending back and forth of messages is what communication all about. Let us say the adults rule communicating love, understanding, and acceptance. As adults, we cannot just sit back and say, well, I'm going to talk in a particular way because somebody said or did something. This attitude reflects a reaction to a situation. However, when we are trying to help young children, we need to think ahead and try to anticipate what may happen. As teachers and parents, we need to use our knowledge about how communication works to modify what messages we send and the way in which we react to other people's messages. Our messages and responses can and should be used to help children develop in many ways. By communicating effectively, we can help children develop in many ways. By communicating effectively, we can help children understand the world around them. Children pick up ways of communication from adults. We often see children imitating adults in the way they talk and behave. That is, adults become models for children to learn from. Also, it is important that they feel good about themselves, feel that they are capable enough to achieve their goals. Then, how can we communicate love, understanding, and acceptance? Suppose the teacher had said the above remark, like in a softener, if he has reiterated in a sentence in a softer tone, like I noticed that you have colored the elephant green, instead of a remarkable statement, what is this, don't you know elephant are green? Farang's reaction would probably not have been hurt in this situation. Now let us look at a few more examples. When a 9-year-old girl gets into a fight and comes back hurt and crying, we could say, would you like to tell me what happened? Instead of, big girls don't cry, or you are always fighting. 11-year-old Rohit is working out a puzzle. He has already been at it for 15 minutes. There are three possible responses. We shall pick the one that we think most effectively communicates the message that we appreciate him and affect he is making. The first question is, why don't you put this away? It is too hard for you. You have got half of it finished. You would better finish this fast because it is almost time for dinner. The second response is obviously a more desirable and helpful one. That is, you have got half of it finished. It shows an acceptance of the child and his work without giving unrealistic praise. Then, how do you communicate? How we communicate? Being loving, being holistic, being accepting, being rejecting. The remarks that we make while talking to children show our love and acceptance of them. Sometimes our remarks show our hostility, anger, and rejection. None of us is always or completely loving or completely hostile, completely accepting or completely rejecting. Probably we are somewhere in between these two extremes. Which am I more like? It's always a question. However, having realized that communicating love and acceptance are important for the child's development, we can attempt to be more aware of what we say and how we say it. We can try to communicate to children that we care, love, and accept them. If we are loving and accepting that, will be apparent in most of our communication. Similarly, if we are rejecting, it will be reflected in our everyday communication. Sometimes, for convenience, we can classify these patterns of communicating into three types. Listen to me, or else the authoritarian pattern. This is the first one. What does this statement convey to us? This reflects an authoritarian approach in the adult's way of communicating. The authoritarian approach means that the teacher or parent is in charge. She or he is the authority and controls the situation. Big and small decisions are taken by the authority figure, and children are expected to follow instructions and obey without question. Order is usually maintained more easily when this is the basic pattern of relating to children. However, there is a very little opportunity for initiative on the part of children or for them to decide and choose for themselves. Now, second type is it's all right, do whatever you want to. The permissive pattern. This approach is reflected in parent or teacher remarks and behavior such as whatever you do is all right. Parent to child whose eyes are drooping but doesn't want to go to sleep. You can stay up and watch TV if you want to. Teacher ignoring a first fight that is developing in the playground. In an extremely permissive style of communication, it is as though parents and teachers have no leadership to offer, although they may provide specific help when asked. They usually stay out of everything. In a classroom situation, this may create a situation where a child, even if he or she wants to work, is prevented from doing so by other members of the groups. What needs to be considered, therefore, is the effectiveness of such an approach. Children do, in fact, need to have some limits placed on their actions. Otherwise, they may feel insecure, not being sure whether adults will stop them from getting into dangerous situations. Children may either become insecure or dominating, always insisting on getting their way. The next step is let's see if we can sort this out together. The democratic or participative pattern. A democratic or participative, participative approach. Here, the teacher or parent creates situation where children can be helped to take decisions about various things. Everybody's needs are taken into account. Even when the decisions are taken by the adult, it is after a discussion where the children are taken into confidence and given reasons and explanations for why and how something has to be done. Such an approach usually requires more time in terms of getting things done as compared to the efficiency and order that is often the result of the authoritarian approach. Now, which approach would you like to use? As adult, we may have more information, more insight into the possible consequences of certain actions. Because of this, we may often take a decision and ask a child to able to abide by them, follow them. However, the difference between being authoritative and being authoritarian is that the decisions taken by the adults are not just imposed on the child. For example, when a parent decides that it is not appropriate for the child to play outside after 7 p.m., she or he or also has a lot of reasons behind this. Their homework, you think they might fall down and hurt themselves in the dark if they have forgotten their homework. In the authoritative approach, we may communicate our decision to the child in very clear terms. Would also provide the reason behind that decision of ours. This makes it more likely that children will understand, accept, and follow these messages and decisions. A particular child may be mature, capable enough to decide for herself or himself. Another child may require more direction and guidance. However, their ability to choose to be responsible for themselves gradually increases, especially when we provide them opportunities. Then, how can we communicate more effectively? Number one, really listening, that is appropriate responding. In order to communicate really effectively, we also have to receive messages more effectively. This involves the skills of listening and responding in ways that will show we have understood the message. In contrast, I mean, there are some situations will arise. In fact, one way of making sure that we understand the message the way it was meant by the sender is to check out or clarify our interpretation of the message through a question or statement. Listening does not just mean sitting and hearing a person talk. It means responding appropriately to the person's verbal or non-verbal message. While we listen effectively, we also communicate understanding and acceptance. This listening was demonstrated by the adults in situations. Number of situations will arise. Helping children recognize and express their thoughts and feelings. Many times, children have difficulties in saying what they think and feel. Adults can respond to their part verbal and part non-verbal messages to help them become clear about their thoughts and feelings and to further express these. Expressing feelings is sometimes partially difficult. Even we adults sometimes do not know what we are feeling. There are three aspects about the verbalization of feelings that we may want to consider. Number one, the intensity with which we feel something. That is, how strongly do I feel it? Second one, what is it that we are feeling? For example, if a child almost falls down the stairs and we catch them and start shouting, can't you be more careful? Etc. Are we really feeling anger or are we hiding our relief that he has not been hurt? 3. Number 3. Expressing our feelings in constructive ways. For example, I feel annoyed is likely to go get a better response because the person to whom the message is sent does not feel defensive as they would. If we were to say, you are wrong, you always do things in such a slipshod manner. In order to help children recognize and express their feelings, we first need to recognize and express our own in more effective ways. We can then act as models. This job of expressing feelings can become easier if we are able to use feeling words that show as variation in both the type as well as intensity of feelings. These words can then be used to model the expression of feelings. For example, I am enjoyed or overenjoyed at the prospect of going for the picnic. Verbalize the feelings that a child may be expressing only through their behavior or partially through a few words. When we verbalize feelings, we help children by giving them a way of effectively coping with those feelings as well. The feelings can find an outlet in words without having to rely only on non-verbal behavior. That may be interpreted in several ways. What else influences our interpersonal communications? Let us see. A number of factors can influence how we interpret the message we receive. One of these is the non-verbal behavior of the person sending the message. Suppose we were to be given more information about the person or the situation. Would the meaning we assign to that behavior change? For example, you are told that it was a teacher in a classroom of 40 children who was tapping the pencil on her desk. You may be more likely to assign the alternate meaning was catching someone's attention. Suppose it was a child in the same class. In this case, a possible meaning could be that the child is involved in solving sums. That apart from the non-verbal behavior, the situation in which the communication is taking place, the person who is sending the message, in what kind of tone the message is being sent, etc., can influence how we interpret the messages. Even when the message sent is mostly verbal, these factors have an effect. The impact is likely to be different. Quite often we are irritated when people lecture us even though they obviously know what they are talking about. But when the same idea is conveyed in words we are familiar with and in a tone that encourages discussion, we usually respond more positively. Being aware of how these factors influence communication can help us both in sending and receiving messages more effectively. Now, teachers and parents, let's walk hand in hand. Teacher to parent, you must supervise Rahul's study every day. Take into account Rahul as a subject here. He is very weak in all subjects. If he fails in the examination, don't blame me. Circular sent to parents. Parents are hereby notified that students coming to class in from proper uniform or without books will be detained after school. Parent to teacher. After all, why do we send our children to school? It is your responsibility to make sure they understand. Probably most of these remarks, which are at best impersonal and at worst hurtful, in the case of the first sentence, and the third sentence to the parents, to teachers, go will not be very helpful. Now, let's try to and rephrase these messages, keep in mind that parents and teachers are not rivals in a different panel. Like, I'm very concerned about Rahul. He is such a friendly, helpful child. He needs help in his studies. Though I was wondering if we could both find a way to help. With your special training, I feel you would be able to explain this to my daughter in a much better way. However, if you could suggest something specific for me to do with her at home, I will do my best. So these are the very permissible statements to be made. These rephrased communication responses are likely to be more helpful. They indicate mutual respect and regard for each other's efforts. Now, let us see influence of mass media on child development. There seems to be a magic formula behind appeal of radio, comics, TV, and movies. There are many reasons why children spend so much time on them. For instance, in comic books, the pictures carry the stories along so that it is unnecessary to do much reading. TV offers exciting stories told in short episodes that keep up interest. The radio also brings to the children their favorite latest music program. Movies transport children to a dreamland. They identify with the heroes. There is thrill, excitement, and action. Another reason why mass media appeal to children is their easy accessibility. Children can enjoy radio and television programs merely by turning a knob. They can easily obtain comics, storybooks, and magazines. Movies, of course, are a family favorite. Besides, the stories provided on radio and TV, the comics and books offer an escape from the routine of everyday living. The print media. For print media provide reading material for children which include newspapers, books, magazines and comics. Of these, books and comics are the most popular and the newspapers the least popular. There are marked as well as individual difference in the children's preferences. Most young children prefer stories about familiar people, animals and fairy tales. Around the age of 6 to 8 years, children prefer concrete experiences and things to watch which they can relate. Fantasy, humor, and happy endings are also favorable themes. Older children become more realistic because of intellectual growth and school experiences. Sex stereotyping and consciousness about what is considered sex appropriate also develops. By 10 to 12 years, their reading interests include adventure, mystery, science, detective stories, etc. In the course of teaching, we must have found children bringing books or comics to school. What are some of their favorites? It would be a good idea to have a survey of the students' reading preferences. List the number of children class who read newspapers, storybooks, magazines, and comics. The children who read comics are sure to be many. These comics need not be only humorous. There are stories and adventure, romance, detectives, as well as mythological ideas. Radio and movies. As parents or teachers, you may have noticed a similar keenness of children to catch up on their favorite program or listen to their favorite tapes. Children enjoy listening to programs which are exciting and entertaining. Watching movies, whether in a movie theater or on television, is one of the children's favorite pastimes. Uh, these are very important. And next, the television. Television is a combination of the attractive features of the radio and movies and is one of the most popular form of mass media during childhood years. Television viewing in many homes is more or less a family affair. Generally, all the family members with neighbors and friends sit around the TV to watch the popular serial at the national network. It was rare to find anybody out on the streets when the popular serial Mahabharata was on. Surprisingly, very few children watched programs specially telecast for them during early evenings. At that time, they are more interested in playing outdoors. Besides, the educational programs shown for children are often dull drab, and unexciting. There is no element of story or humor in them. Children prefer programs with cartoons, puppets, mystery, humor, etc. Influence of mass media. So, how this influence on the pictures? I mean, on the students, their imagined pictures. Other viewpoints suggest that some comics, mystery movies, and TV thrillers serve a useful purpose. They provide a harmless outlet for suggestions in normal children. Therefore, the reality of the effect lies somewhere between the two extremes. Some parents and teachers feel that movies, TV, radio, and comics have a bad influence on their children. However, we cannot generalize about the effects of the mass media. We cannot label all movies, comics, radio, and TV programs as good or bad. We have to consider specific programs. Then, too, we have to think of individual children. For judging, we must question like which movies, radio, and TV programs, and for which age group of children. It affects on attitudes and values. Mass media play a very important active role in the life of the children. Guns for boys and dolls for girls doesn't have to be that way. What do you think? What do you think could be the cause of these sex differences in play? Are these differences inborn, present right from the birth of the child, or are a result of learning? Let us see the following situation. Mummy, I also want a gun like Miss said Jyoti. What will do with a gun? Guns are for boys, said Jyoti's mother. I'll get you a nice doll. Mr. Verma was worried about his son Raju because he loved playing house family with his sister and her friends. Mr. Verma brought a new gun, small toy car, and a Miko set for Raju, but Raju would play with them for only a little while and then call his sister to play house family or teacher. Student, what is the sex stereotypes in play? As parents and teachers tend to encourage such play behavior, believing that in this way children can learn and practice the sex role behaviors expected of them. Thus, girls are encouraged to play with dolls, toy utensils, and other quite indoor games, while boys are encouraged to play with marbles, cars, guns, and other outdoor games that involve more physical activity, aggressiveness, and competition. Even as babies, we tend to give them toys considered appropriate for their sex. As they grow, we emphasize this kind of distinction more and more. Now, this creates problems. Expecting and pressuring children to play what is believed to be appropriate for their sex can be very hazardous to their personal and social adjustment. It is true that girls are better in doing activities like knitting, weaving, embroidery, puzzles, playing guitar, etc. because their fine motor skills are generally better developed than those boys. And also that boys can run faster, jump higher, cycle faster, etc. than girls. This is because their bones and muscles are stronger and better developed than those of girls, and they are therefore better in gross motor activities. However, it is important that we should provide for both boys and girls play opportunities that include different kinds of play so that they develop according to their own ability and inclination. Now, different play offers upon to learn many things through books, television, interaction with the environment, games, etc. While playing, children handle and manipulate a lot of things, and therefore they learn to classify, categorize, and learn about the relations between them. Playing also helps to develop memory and the ability to analyze, reason, and think of alternative. Playing with other children helps the child develop a healthy spirit of competition, and she learns to be a good sport, a good loser or winner. Play also gives the child a chance to learn to follow rules. The child, through imaginative play, can enact rules and her verbal expressions improves. She learns new relationships among individuals and objects. Play can also serve as a therapy for children with emotional problems. Play can be used as a medium of outlet of tensions, frustrations, and inner conflicts, which the child may not be able to express otherwise. The child can project her inner feelings into the play material like dolls, guns, play, etc. Play therapy can thus be used as a means of understanding the child better and help resolve her tensions and anxieties. The teacher, although not a trained therapist, can in some ways use play to help the child constructively express her ideas, feelings, and emotions. So, these are the things what we have discussed in the lessons. Hope you understood the lesson. Uh, have a nice day. Enjoy the day and let us fight against COVID.